All right, roger that. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Andrew Scott. I run D&D games for Craig Martelle and people like that, and have the largest RPG guild probably in the United States. But in addition to that, I run a lot of technology activities. And so one thing we've discovered is that it can be really difficult if you struggle with a situation where you have a challenge with your data or some kind of a problem with technology. And so Craig's asked me to sort of put together a list of do's and don'ts. We've seen probably within the last 24 months the worst evidence of ransomware and all sorts of cyber attacks and terrible things like that. And so I just wanted to give you guys some ideas and some directions and answer questions on it, because we tend to find that the folks in the cybercrime world have the one thing you don't have, which is time. And so while people are busy making up their passwords and coming up with the name of their dog and their birthday and all the rest of that stuff, anything that you can think of can be cracked in less than 2 seconds. Every single word combination phrase, it's a 2-second deal. So how do you deal with that? And what do we want to do? Yay, you're working for yourself. That's awesome. That's what writing is all about. I actually finished my first official book. I'm published mostly in technical stuff and a lot of sci-fi short stories and things like that, but my actual official book is done this weekend, so now I have to get going. But the problem with working for yourself is it's a thankless situation when it comes to setting yourself up, making sure you're secure, and dealing with those things. And that comes from the simple stuff like having your phone, which is really a small computer. And most people's phones in here are set to wireless because by default, Apple and some of the other brands always turn the wireless on first thing in the morning. And all those phones broadcast out. The integrated networks within this building are very simple to write on, and I met with the general manager and said, do you realize how open your stuff is and you're broadcasting things out, and I can see pretty much everything in this building? And so it's frightening how, sitting at an airport, how many devices are broadcasting and talking, and that means if anyone can see it, they can see everything you're doing to the keystroke. And so it's scary, but it does lead us to, I think, the questions that really matter. And the number one question that you really want to spend time with as you're dealing with this is, how long can you afford to be down? And the challenge with that is most people say, I can't be down. I can never be down. But you're going to be down all the time depending on what you depend on. And it's either going to be a computer, a laptop, a phone, a tablet, whatever that device is. And so that becomes the question that you have to figure out is, how long can you actually be down and survive? Because most support companies now, their wait time and the access to materials is so slow on report that you have to make sure that you have alternate ways to get access to your information. And so then the question comes, how are you backing up? Where are you putting it? What does that all look like? And people don't usually have a plan until about 30 seconds after either the computer turns off or it didn't turn on. And then the plan is, well, I've got to do the Ferris Bueller. I know this kid whose friend knows this guy who saw Ferris at 31 Flavors. And you all have someone. There's a computer guy everywhere. With 6 kids, I have 3 computer guys in my family, and that's sort of my business, but I'm still not the computer guy. They go to my wife, and I'm like, have fun with that. So that's a thing that we want to figure out, is that. And then, are there basic things I can be doing, simple things, that if I change just those, will radically affect my ability to get back online when I go off? Or if my data is stolen or hijacked, that I can either get it back or have copies so that I can get away from it. I can tell you one of my largest clients, this is a billion-dollar concern company, literally had all their stuff turned off in a minute, literally because one person left a laptop on that had administrator access and ransomware, and they're done, and it's $50 million later or nothing. And so they were down for 2.5 weeks. This is a company that ships $1 billion worth of product. Done. In an industry you know, everyone in this room knows this company's name. So scary stuff. So what are typical security concerns? What are people worried about when you're dealing with this? You all write digitally. None of you are writing longhand, I suspect. I have yet to go into a meeting where someone is saying, oh no, I'm still writing longhand. Nobody is. It's all digital. The bulk of it is coming, and I'll bet most of you are using a computer. Do any of you write on a tablet or dictate verbally and just have it translated? Yeah, okay. So that is a little bit of a way to transfer surface data. It's still going to be a question of what it's going to, and that's normally some kind of a computer. How many of you have a plan in place if you get actively hacked? Not that your machine turns off, but someone comes after your stuff, so you have a plan. Okay. So I just did the CEOs of the 600 largest banks in the Midwest, and I asked that question, 0 hands went up. Banks with your money, by the way. What is your plan if your bank gets hacked and you can't get to your systems tomorrow morning? What's the plan? Do any of you know? No hands went up. So just to give you a sense that that's not what people focus on. You're focused on writing. That's your job. Yay, I'm in charge. I have all these great thoughts. I'm putting all this information down. And then your machine doesn't turn on, or you see a little note saying, I have your stuff. Send me a check for $50,000. You have 2 weeks. Otherwise, I'll publish it all, or I'll delete it all. And my client chose to say, go ahead, publish it. And so the hackers did. And put it out on a very common website on the dark web. All of their financials. Recovery, that's scary. How does that happen? So that's going to be a thing we talk about too. Because once you do get hacked, the question, or a virus in such a way that you can't recover from it, where's your stuff? The worst thing about it is what we said in the very beginning. The people who are doing this as a profession, and it is now an active, well-paying profession, have the one thing you don't have. They have time. They hire people who spend their entire day doing this. And it's easy. It's a very easy job to do because people don't know where to put their stuff or how to secure their stuff. And so that expectation becomes, well, I took all the time to, buy Microsoft Word and I pay for my license. I have my stuff, but all the mechanics behind it don't make sense. And so that struggle is where the disconnect is because people don't figure that out. And so we want to make sure that we have some basics. Now, you guys probably have 2 or 3 things going. You have all the devices in your home. Those devices are either plugged in directly, hardwired to something, a plug that's coming out of the wall that's giving you network, or even happier and easier and more convenient, it's wireless. Yay, I have everything on wireless, and I'm wandering around and I'm connecting different items, and I can jump my stuff from one item to the next item, and that's cool. And then third, I have my website. My website isn't in my house, I don't think. It's somewhere out there. I think out there is the internet. What exactly is the internet? Well, that's a thing, a place, a person. It's somewhere. And so there's all these different tools and things we have that we know just a little bit about, but not enough that when you get the note or the machine doesn't turn on, you don't know what to do. And so if there's no plan, where do you go? So that's the stuff. And how can it be that this stuff is getting harder to use? Well, it's getting harder to use because we want it to be simpler to connect. I want my watch to talk to my phone, to talk to my laptop, to talk to my briefcase, to talk to my shoes. I want to be able to talk to everything I want to be able to talk to. My son showed me how he has an authentication device that actually synchronizes with his glasses now. And literally he can read in the bottom of his glasses, like Google Glass and some of those old things now. He has a multifocal lens glasses, so he can read code in the bottom of his glasses while he's working on his computer. He's looking at code in the bottom of his glasses. Very scary. The future. Well, the problem is we keep thinking, and mostly it's stuff that we had, and a lot of us have older technology. Why do I say that? Because the people who are the most proficient are about 18 years old, and they're using the technology that's coming that you don't even know exists today, and they're going to be dictating the terms of what people are interested in. Surprisingly, the first time I came to 20Books, nobody knew what TikTok was. One person sat up and said, I've got this, I'm using this, and they showed pictures and everyone was looking, trying to figure out what that is. Now, it's getting a lot more common. but there's a whole host of things that you guys have never seen, and the place to go to get a sense of what the new technology is look and see what kids are using for apps, because the ones they find that you use, they don't use. The idea behind that is interesting. When did all this stuff really happen? Go back a little bit. I always like to throw this slide out to people to say, just go back a little bit of time. 2006, there was no iPhone. Internet Explorer 6 was out there. Netscape had just died on the vine. The lawsuit got settled and they were out. They were done. There was no such thing as the cloud. There was no such thing as Netflix. A tablet was really a removable screen from a laptop. That was the first idea of what an incident tablet was. And of course, all of you who had a MySpace account were very excited with being able to establish your own icon. That was new in 2005 and 2006. So the technology moves really fast. So the question really is, if you think about how quickly things change, that leads you to, what do we know? Well, stuff works easier now. It's much quicker, it's much more stable. If you think about older version of Windows, the blue screen of death was a very common thing. You had a whole host of things that wouldn't load properly. Now things fix and are very workable. The problem we have is the logistics and distribution model. Getting parts is almost impossible right now. The backlog and getting access to stuff you need timely is hard, which is why the idea of a plan becomes so essential. And knowing how you're backing up and why you're backing up multiple times makes a big difference, because that's where people are getting burned. We literally have one division of our security group, and they spend all day just taking phone calls from people whose machines have bricked or been lost, or, oh my God, someone got into my machine. I can see someone doing something on my machine. I see my stuff out on the internet. And that just becomes sort of a nightmare. One of the things I always think about is, if we know that 15 some odd years ago we were that far back, what is in store for us in the next 5 or 10 years? Well, the first thing I just saw that sort of fascinated me a couple of years ago was watching how storage is no longer a thing. Right now, you have storage on all the devices you have. Well, the thing I've just seen is literally, right now, it's about the size of a room, maybe a room in your house, that is frozen, and lasers are etching on the actual proteins in the air data. And as that will shrink down, so storage will no longer be about space. Storage is about objectivity. And you will see that energy will be the thing. The next thing you see, right now you have plugs in your house. Well, wireless power is a real thing now. And that once wireless power gets passed as a thing and they can broadcast power to all the locations, you'll see a radical change in how we transfer energy in and out of places. So you're watching now lots of advantageous changes. Most of the voice software that was out there, things like Dragon Naturally Speaking from the early 90s, I used it from the very alpha version of that, which had a vocabulary of 500,000 words, and every word you added that was your own, you ate one of its internal vocabulary words. Now it's pretty much infinite, and you can run and dictate for hours and hours and hours, and in real time it will collaborate and upload that stuff. So there's going to be some very interesting changes. Most of them have to do with getting rid of physical type-on keyboard type things, making that much more virtual, a lot more integrated assistance. You've got watches, there's other stuff coming, some amazing looking devices and hardware that I've seen that will all synchronize. Your ability to authenticate with doorways. There are some companies right now that you can have an RFID literally embedded in your arm to walk through their doors like you go in the supermarket and places. Supermarkets allow you to check out without actually talking to anyone. It scans everything when you go through the bridge wires. There's a whole host of companies who are doing things like that. So we're getting a real look at how technology is changing stuff, and it looks like magic because it's not stuff that we have spent time contemplating. So if you think back to the slide of what 15 years ago looked like, what do you think 15 years in your future is going to look like? You're still going to be writing. But what are you going to be writing on? Where are you going to be doing it? And knowing that your technology is already a bunch of years out of date, the people whose job is to get your information are staying cutting edge, whereas you're using whatever's commercially available. So that's a different mentality. So the only things you can do when you think about that is, how do you protect yourself? Well, you make sure that you've got back up early, back up often, looking at that. Think about when the internet became a thing in the 90s. ARPANET and all the other integrated stuff, that was all great dial-up. My father had this 3-foot tall thing. He was an IBM guy working downtown in Chicago, and they had this huge coupler device with this monster straight feed printer, and you'd slap the phone in and it would just pump out pages, and we could play Lunar Lander and all these ridiculous games in the 70s. And now anything, any computer that you can think of has nowhere near the power of your phone. And so what's going to be your next computer and what that's going to look like and how you're going to contemplate what you're going to be using for your writing platform and making sense out of is probably stuff that's coming in your near future. Because today we think of writing, and most of the people in this room probably say, oh, that was typing. First it was longhand, and then I was typing, and then I was on a word processor, and then I was on a computer, and now I'm verbal, and maybe so much is going to be changing. We're watching it, and it's moving fast. I guess the question that we need to think about is making sure we understand sort of the terms that people are talking about. And by the way, the presentation will be thrown up there, so you'll have access to all this information. You'll have access to my email, so if you have questions, you can shoot me notes. I have 2 people who literally read my email all day long because I get over 1,000 emails, 1,500 emails a day. So their only job is to read email. And so we will definitely get back to you. What is all this crazy stuff? 2-factor authentication, password vaults, phishing, antivirus. All these things are terms in the security technology world that are things you have heard, or maybe not heard, but everyone probably knows what antivirus is, because that's a normal term. Everyone probably knows what encryption is, or at least backups. Are any of these words foreign to you? Does everyone know what a password vault is? Exactly right. LastPass is a great one. Yeah, there's tons of them, and LastPass is the one I used for a whole host of years until they literally got opened wide, and about 75% of their user base was taken, and so just boom, done. Oh, of course they fixed that, but what does it mean when they fix it? It's the same letter you get in the mail. Hey, good news, we're your credit card company, and accidentally someone got all of Visa's file sets, and so you're going to get a free year of monitoring if you join this proprietary company that will then, you'll pay $34 a month after that. But it's free right now because we gave away your social security and your address. Oops, sorry about that. Everything's going to be okay, though. Passwords, it's the thing we talked about also in the very beginning. It is very difficult to get people to deal with passwords in a way that is helpful. Most people need a word or a phrase. Password vaults become a great way to avoid that because they give you an option, which is really important, to put in a secure password. And this is just a ridiculous number of letters and numbers, capitalized and not capitalized, humongous in length, that works. My kids go crazy because I use a 256-character encryption password, which is 46 characters that I have memorized for our internet connection, and they go bananas. But now they've got it memorized, which is good, but that took them about 10 years, and there's 6 of them, so it all works out. The struggle you find is that people look for the simplest thing, and normally at conferences I say, how many people use password? And a hand always goes up, because it's just easier to use that, or the default, whatever the company default is. When you get a password locker or vault and it gives you the option to use their encrypted complex password that you never have to memorize, that's your ticket. That's the thing that the computers can't figure out. It takes them time. And when I say can't figure out, that means you've got maybe 2 minutes. They're going to break your stuff. The question is, how do you survive and recover from them breaking your stuff? That's what we want to get a sense. I always try and ask people to make a good habit of changing passwords quarterly. It just doesn't happen. It's just too hard to do. If you can set reminders, which is usually helpful, and remember to make sure that you give your data 2 minutes of your time every day, which nobody will do, but maybe you'll give 2 minutes of your time once a week, which nobody will do, but maybe you'll give 2 minutes of your time once a month, which nobody will do, but sometimes you'll do it once a quarter. That seems to be the sweet spot for where people will change passwords at gunpoint. Most people don't change passwords until their machine says, your password has been in use for 1,720 days. Please change me. and then they change it when they get forced to by a bank or whoever. So that's going to be a question. They're a nightmare. They're not going away. You're always going to have them, and you're stuck with them. And so the question is, what do you do about it? So what I always tell folks as a reminder is passwords are no good. They are easy to remember. Focus on passphrases. And what do I mean by that? I always say the easiest thing to do is to think of your absolute favorite song. And if you know your favorite song, take a letter from each of the words in it, maybe the first 10 words of your favorite song, and the first letter in each of it, and there's a great password. No one's ever going to figure that out, and you know it cold. You and your significant other have a favorite song together. Now you have a password you can share, and it's not a word, it's a phrase, it's a thing. Try and think out of the box when it comes to doing passwords, because that's what's killing people. There's people, stickers right on desks all the time. I look at all these Facebook posts from people, and you can see their password sticker on their computer when they're like, I just wrote the end, I finished my chapter, I finished my book. And you're like, okay, there's their bank account. That's their password. There's the cat. Oh, there's their address. There's their checking account. I mean, stuff is all over the desk, and they take a photo of that because they stick them all the time. When we do audits and go into companies, it is a constant thing. And so the vigilance, the part of this that's really important, is the part that people don't have time for. But if you don't take the time, you're going to get bricked, and your stuff is going to vanish, or it's going to get corrupted, or it's going to get stolen. And you're not going to be able to recover from it unless there's a plan. What's encryption? What is that? Are you all familiar with that term? Is that a thing you know? Encryption is sort of a vague term that people use. It's basically a way of taking what you have written and making it unintelligible until it is decoded. So if you all are fans of Batman from the 60s, Batman was able to take alphabet soup and pour it into the Bat computer, and the Bat computer could read the code that was put in the alphabet soup letters. That's decryption, basically taking the information. Never do that. I did see a gallon of white paint get sucked into a giant Univax computer in Bank of America, and that made us sound like the Batmobile. It was really fascinating to watch that, and it was just a very interesting sound. Well, and that was the excitement as it was dying. The death throw of that. None of us could believe it. The guy was painting in there. We don't know how he got a clearance to be in that room. It was a 3-letter room, which was very bad, and he was painting away. And we're like, why is there a guy in a lab? Ooh, look at that! Right into the intake, and it was fascinating. It's not good news. Phishing, another very scary thing. Do you guys know what to look for with phishing? Is it something you've heard of? The good news, the best news that you can know is there's a really good chance there is someone very wealthy who just needs a little help from you, and you're going to be a millionaire tomorrow. I guarantee it. Most onboard email programs now are pretty good, about 60%, at getting the bulk of that mail away from you. The challenge we have is usually what I tell my mom, and we'll get to antivirus, that's pretty basic, but I give a rule that I call the rule of sandwich. And this was a rule I told my 82-year-old mother with technology. And the rule of sandwich is simple. If you see a sandwich on the ground, are you going to pick that up and eat that? Well, no, of course not. Then why are you clicking on email from people you don't know? She looks at me, what? Say that again? You're not picking up the sandwich. You know not to pick that up, but you click on things from anyone. And so that is the first thing that I always recommend is train yourself out of that. Have her call me.
I often notice too that words are not spelled well. Grammar is not something that would be normal for me to use.
It's a huge thing to actually take time and look stuff over. Because we are in such a hurry, because we are doing so much, that is the gamble with why so many technology attacks and cybercrime activities are successful. Because you just get a link, I promise you, your bank is never sending you any email ever that says anything about verify your account. Amazon doesn't do that, nobody does.
One of my favorites, I got a phishing email that looked like it was from Amazon. The grammar was good, the layout was good, the email address was Amazon legit giveaway.
Yeah, I swear I'm real. And it's amazing how much of this stuff is happening. It's the same with phone calls. My mom will get phone calls all the time from people who will say, hey, your computer's got this thing, we just noticed it, and I just need you to do this, and she'll be on the phone for 3 hours. I'm like, Mom, you can't talk to anyone. If anyone ever says you have a computer issue, hang up the phone and call me. But it took training to get through that, and because we have so much obsequious stuff, and she doesn't bank online, and we don't have any of that stuff happening, there was nothing to get. But it's still, your intentions are always good. You believe that most people have your best interests at heart. They have zero interest at heart. It's a business. They're getting paid to find ways to get to your stuff, and they're in and out instantly. Whatever your max line is on your credit, they are in and out instantly. If you do online banking, and I recommend nobody does online banking unless you use two-factor authentication. If you do online banking without two-factor authentication, you are going to lose everything you have. I guarantee it. Every single day we are dealing with that hundreds of times, because people think it's never going to be me. It's always you. It's just a numbers game. They have what you don't. They have time. 100% time. These people are incentivized to find everyone. And you work for yourself, and you have no one to go to. And so that is a really tough wall to be backed against. And so, is it scary? Yeah, it's scary, but the question is, how do we deal with it? How do we figure out, because there's so much new stuff, and you just hit it right. Wait, I was told there would be no math. I showed up to just write. Why is there all this other stuff? Because you are always under the auspices of, I want it easier. I want it fast. I want to connect all my stuff. I want to get it to, I have to be able to upload. Sure. I have to attach files. I filled out my Social Security, my driver's license, and I scanned that in, and then I emailed that, and off it goes. One thing I like to tell people is a little bit about how email works. Email was a program idea that was created basically by the military as a way to transport information across the country if vital sections of our infrastructure was destroyed. And so how email works, in a very simple illustration, is imagine this is your email. And what happens is you write all your information on it. When your email gets sent, a little number series goes across the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and same on the bottom. And then you drop it through a shredder. And all those little packets now have parts of your email. And they go out into ether space, into the internet. And they are called and looked for by routers that are literally calling out, oh, I've got packet 1, hey, where's the number 3 and 4? And it's reassembling it. What bad people do is they set out devices all over the internet that look for stray packets. And when they grab those packets, they say reassemble the rest of it. And they reassemble all the other packets that they call, and then start reading the emails. Ooh, this is someone's driver's license. Scan. Oh, now I've got their address. Ooh, this is someone's Social Security on an application to get this. If you ever send your personal and confidential information over the internet, it's public information. You have no control of who's getting it, and it isn't going where you're saying. It's going wherever it's going as fast as it can possibly get there. But unfortunately, it will replicate as many times with as many servers as pick up one of the stray packets. Happens every day and all day.
How do you convince them not to do the same thing? Because I say, oh, I'll bring it to you in person.
Exactly.
My tax information, and all they do is scan it and send it to somebody else. So it's going from there.
So the struggle is, some places are very good at that, and some places are very bad at that. Banks have a whole host of laws that they're on the hook for not doing that. And the way they encrypt and in fact information, the same is true of NFS information. So now you'll see with your credit cards, when you go up to an authentication machine, it has 3 ways you can get information into it. So you can say, okay, I pop my card out and I can stick it in because I got a chip. I can slide it out the back. Or if I have a wireless PCR, I can actually tap it and it will get that. And if it's within a certain number of inches, then hey, good news, it will be able to get that information wirelessly. The problem is, all that information is being broadcast on these devices. And so if you're not such a nice human being whose phone is a little more promiscuous, I can literally suck up credit card information right on my phone. I can take someone's key card, emulate it, and so I don't need a key card to go into a room. I just put my phone up there. So you have to make sure that you know where your information is being broadcast. When I travel and go out in places like that, my key card's in the bottom of my boot. It's down here. There's nowhere to get it. Or it's in my Secret thing. This is a non-RFID, non-penetratable thing. So I can walk through an airport and nobody can scan my information. If your wallet isn't designed to protect against RFID or any of those things, this is a Kevlar briefcase. Literally the entire interior of that is covered with material so that it cannot be scanned. And the reasons you do that is because your data is yours only one time while you're given it initially. After that, you don't have control over it. And all that information is out the window. So yes, the more information you take care of and slow the process down, the more likely it will still be under your control. And that's really what security is about, is what level of control do I have? When you go up to a gas pump, if you pump right there, you're taking a risk, because gas pumps are an easy thing to mimic and authenticate against. You want to walk into the store, but it's not as easy. We want drive-through service. We want supersize. We want fast. And the faster you want it, the rule is always the rule of two. Cheap, fast, or good. Pick two. No, I don't want that. I want them all. Cheap, fast, or good. You get two. Which ones do you really want? And that's the hardest thing to figure out, is how do we struggle through that in a way that makes sense? Broad strategies. How do we do it? And this is a horrible talk. This is a terrible thing that shouldn't have to happen. The reason Craig has me do that is to try and arm people with some basics and some ideas on what are some best practices that you can do to at least get a starting point, a foundational place where you can draw a line in the sand and say, I will do this and I won't do that. Because that's what technology is coming down to. And the things that are important for your general sense of security are, you have to make sure that you give your security at least a couple minutes of your time every day, every week, every month. Nobody wants to. It's not convenient. And it's not convenient until your computer is a brick that doesn't turn on. Then it's a little more convenient. No, it isn't. Then you're calling someone saying, someone somewhere in the ether broke my computer. Make it work. They say, well, you can bring it over to Best Buy. Well, the Geek Squad can look at it. Well, you can bring it to the Apple Store. You got to make an appointment. I can't make an appointment because my computer's a brick. It's the craziest thing. Easy changes. That's what we can talk about. Because if you can do a couple of easy things, you radically reduce your digital footprint of risk. Because that's what matters. That's the stuff that matters. Okay. No one's changing their passwords every week. No one's changing them every month. But maybe you'll do it quarterly. That is the number one thing I can recommend to you. If you're the person who changes your passwords quarterly, you radically reduce the risk, because most people don't do it for 2 years on average, unless they have a system that changes it. How do you change your password quarterly? You put a reminder on your phone in your calendar that yells at you. Not that pops up in your calendar, it's an alarm. And you can easily set that in notes or a calendar, anything you want, and add a sound to it. Yell at yourself. You're not going to do it. Nobody wants to do it. It's a pain. It is the number one thing that will decrease risk, is having your password changed multiple times a year with a phrase, one of the letters from your favorite song, the first 10 words, whatever it is, something that is not an actual word. Any word you know, any words that's printed, just under 2 seconds, every word in the universe is crackable.
But you don't want to use the same password for all your sites.
No.
You have to know all your sites.
So if you're not going to buy a password vault, I'm saying your best line of defense is to stop using words. Because ultimately, because they have time and you don't, you have to see what are the things I'm willing to settle for. The vault is the best way to go, because that will allow you to press the button that says encrypt all my passwords and choose them for me. Give me crazy computer ones that even I won't remember.
You just need the password to get into the vault. So you won't buy the vault. Yeah.
Right, but you're still going to need one to get in. What she's talking about is you still need one to get into the vault. So choose a crazy, ridiculous song that only you will know. That's not it. Don't say for LastPass, my password's LastPass. Exclamation mark. Uh-oh. That's not going to be good.
I thought it gave me what I get, and then I'll get to change it. I have to print it out, save it.
In two-factor authentication, yes, you have those options, but in most of the primary vaults, they still have a master password associated with it. I always say, have it encrypted and make sure that you print the list and the data decorum. It's the same with when people go on vacation. I say the first thing you should always do is take every credit card, take every form of ID that's going in your wallet, throw it on your photocopy those, and leave them in the house. Because if your wallet gets stolen or you lose your ID, you're going to need to know that stuff so that all those numbers can be called, and you don't know the numbers. But they're on the back of the card by law. And then you can at least get them and move forward. People don't, and it's time. It's ticking. It's how quickly they can get through your stuff and get in and out of it.
LastPass assign, I choose it to assign working
Exactly.
letters, digits.
Useless. There's no value because it doesn't mean anything to you, and it's going to be about 24 characters long. Perfect. Have fun with that.
Now LastPass also gives you an awesome option for my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Fill in, but also because it's impossible to write in that password on my phone. It feels like I'm culpable because I kind of have LastPass on my phone.
So never leave apps open on your phone. I tell people that all the time too. Always have an RFID case for your phone. Always make sure it's multi-factor encrypted on your phone. And then for whatever your LastPass name is, don't use a word, use a phrase for your master password. That's the only thing you can do to at least back that off and know that some of this stuff's been compromised. Antivirus, swap it out. Whatever you've got, switch it every couple of years. They all get cracked. Kaspersky was the best antivirus software in the early 20-teens. And Kaspersky, it was a Russian-based software that was really good. Now it's a dicey choice to use because of our relationship with the Russians. So how do you pick a good one? I've got a list of ideas that you guys can at least look at and do a little homework on at the end, and it'll be on the slides, and then you can take photos of it if you want as well. But some of that stuff becomes an issue. Most people started with Norton or McAfee. Those are the bread and butter antiviruses that had the most volume in the 90s and the early 2000s. They're still out there. They still work. They have a lot more false positives than some of the newer ones like WebRoot and Avast and some of the different ones. But I always say, don't keep the same antivirus because over time, that becomes an easy signature for your computer to be compromised. Swap it out every couple of years. Wi-Fi routers. The number one thing that I find humorous is everywhere I go, I can get into Wi-Fi in about 16 seconds because people spend no time at understanding how to either hide their Wi-Fi, to make sure they separate out their Wi-Fi. They don't have a hardwired Wi-Fi. They have them literally as just little nodes they stick around their house for convenience, and those things broadcast like crazy. It's the easiest way into your network. On my neighborhood, we would have big parties. We had a pool. It was kind of a giant, ridiculous pool with a two-story water slide and a big dragon that shot water and fire over. It was just ridiculous. So we had big pool parties all the time. And my neighbors would come over and I'm like, you guys realize you're broadcasting everything you own from your printer to all of your technology that I can get to. Don't let that happen. You want to be visible. Why can't you see anything here? Because my house is a black hole. However, if you need access to Wi-Fi, you'll see a QR code over on that wall that you can scan, and that will put you into my little sandbox that will allow you a Wi-Fi access that has nothing to do with my network, but it's a way for you to get to the internet. You want to control anyone who touches your environment. And with 6 kids, they had a lot of friends over, and they all had their all digital devices. I had no interest in having my kids blurt out passwords and stuff, so they had a little QR code into a sandbox protected environment, and that's easy to set up. Nobody does it. So, simple stuff. Remember the rule of sandwich? I want you guys all to get good and go lecture the rest of your family about that. Would you touch that? No. Well, then why are you clicking on that email? And no, you're not going to get the money from the prince or the emperor. Neither one of them is going to pony up the $150 million.
So if I have a router with an encrypted password, that's still not safe?
In general, no, because most routers, the backhaul, how they're sending their information is still trying to be made easier by your tablet, by your watch, by your phone. They all want it as cheap, fast, and good. I only get 2. And so that's a struggle. So I found a couple of router brands that hardwire everything, and they've done a really good job at being, I mean, we bang the heck out of them to see which ones work and which ones don't. For simplicity's sake, if you're not going to hardwire your environment, choose the ones that have high PKI and values. Google Home one is an easy one for people to use who aren't transporting a lot of sensitive data. It's a good one. If you decide to do online banking, you can only do things with two-factor authentication or I know your online banking. Really, that's the answer. Any decision you make where you're sharing any of the data that controls your money and your books cannot be under anything other than two-factor authentication, or it's mine. And I will take your stuff, and I'm a bad person. I'm going to run away, and then I'm going to send you a nasty note, and hopefully you have $50,000. And that's bad. But that's it. The number doesn't matter. It's the time. And that's the part that is the derail from all of this. The disconnect is once you're down, you're down. And so the question you should go home with today is, how long can I really afford to be down? Is it a day? If I couldn't work tomorrow, am I okay? If I couldn't work in December, am I okay? What happens if I have to ship my computer out? Do I have something else? Do I have another way to get to my stuff? If all my stuff is on this one single hard drive and there's no physical backup and no cloud backup to it, what happens? Do I have a way of syncing my stuff in a collaborative mode with other partners and business vendors I work with? How do I control that? And so those are the kind of things that we really need to be thinking about. Start with your home. It's the easiest. Make sure you prioritize the stuff that's the most important to you. And I say easiest things are passwords. Easiest things are cleaning up your applications. Easiest things are swapping out antivirus, doing some stuff like that. Those are going to be things that matter. For physical security, make sure when you travel, take a picture of everything you got. Don't take a picture with your camera. Your camera is digitally integrated directly to either Apple or Google or whoever. You don't want to share that way. You want to do it on a flatbed or a scanner, something that's going to allow you access to that data in a way that you get it. That's going to be important. It's a basic general sense of security. Do yourself a favor and buy an RFID wallet so that you're always authenticating with those so nobody can scan your stuff, because I guarantee you they are. They're doing it all the time. You're walking up and down streets everywhere, you're going everywhere, and all your data is someone's walking past you, and if they're within about 15 feet, they're sucking up all your contacts, they're sucking up anything that your phone knows, they know, including your email addresses. So you have something like this, when you need a card, pop it up, scans directly, multi-authentication, and you're done. But when it's down and in, cannot be scanned. And we test this stuff all the time to see which ones work and which ones don't, because a lot of them don't.
I have bought a couple of RFID pouches or whatever. Is there any way for me to test if they're working? I'm a little skeptical because I want my car key and then
So there are some ways that you can do that. There are some devices that will do that. Let me see if I can find any cheap ways to do that. I mean, we are testing crazy stuff like that all the time, sweeping for bugs, doing horrible things like that. But I know that there's some slightly cheap ways.
Would there be just a brand you could recommend or two?
Yeah, and I have some of those up there. Some thoughts, some of the things I've talked about. Antivirus, the ones that we tend to find have the best shelf life lately. And I say lately, last 2 years, because internet time is short. AVG seems to be doing really well. WebRoot, bread and butter, that one holds well for both antivirus stuff and their firewall. They're pretty good. On Windows computers, Microsoft's Defender is doing great. It is taking a ton of abuse. They have done so much work to making it a better onboard firewall. We are surprised to tell people that for the money, when you buy the license, it's working good. So that's good. Home network, Orbi is the #1 thing I'm finding that works really well for people who want to have a strong and secure network. That one is really taking damage, and every device is hardwireable. What do I mean when I say that? That means it has a plug. I know I'm fired. I see the sign blinking. I know. I apologize for taking so much of your time. It allows you to plug everything in which doesn't draw away from the bandwidth serving all of your wireless devices. And that's a really powerful statement. In English, what that means is however many items you have that are talking to the internet, and it's tons. It's tons of devices. We have 174 devices in my house that talk to the internet. Only my shoes don't talk to the internet right now. Maybe the cats don't talk to the internet, but I can't prove that because when I finally fall asleep, they may be on the internet. Password vaults, Dashlane is the one I have not seen compromised yet. I used to recommend LastPass forever, and then they got rolled over about 1.5 years ago. And so now I'm puzzled by it. We still have a whole host of people who are using it that we had recommended to, but Dashlane is the one we had tried as its successor, and I haven't seen that one busted yet. 1Password has mixed results. In the United States, it's pretty good. In most other countries, it has there's support struggles. And so if you don't travel anywhere, awesome. I live in the Kingdom, the Northeast Kingdom, the Canadian border of Vermont, so I'm across the border all the time. And so I'm always looking for something that can authenticate on both sides of the border, which is an issue. And then I always recommend these guys because it really does hold up really nicely. Secret they're really small and they have all sorts of things. They have wallets, they have purses, all sorts of stuff. But you want to have some way to protect. Everyone's carrying credit cards, no matter what. Credit or debit cards and your driver's license, all of them are embedded with a way to broadcast data and information out. People are reading that data if it's not in a secure device. All right. Wow, I know I bored you to death. What questions can I answer? How can I help? Oh, use the mic? Oh, am I totally out of time? Oh, I'm way out of time. All right, so I'm so fired. All right, well, I will go stand in the hall if people want to ask me questions. So I appreciate you taking time. Other years it's been packed. So yeah, I think the issue is that people probably heard it a lot, or they don't even know what it means. So, right? Everything's going to be okay. Oops. And then Stephen King's line is very true. It stops being.